Hi friends, so the shenanigans and the theatre continues, but I wanted to point out something about Joe Biden, the US presidential nominee from the Democratic Party. I think it sort of shows that he's feeling guilty about the fact that he showed nepotism to his son and got him on the board of a corrupt oil and gas company, Burisma, in Ukraine, and they were paying him $30,000 or $50,000 a month, and he had no experience with this. And this was just after he had helped overthrow the government in Ukraine. He was the point person in the Obama administration for Ukraine, and the Atlantic Council, which is a warmongering right-wing think tank, had a lot to do with Burisma and was actually getting money from Burisma. There's a lot of corruption in this particular situation, and when this voter, who was 84, a retired farm worker, asked Joe Biden, sort of basically pointed out to Joe Biden he was getting access to the president of Ukraine by putting his son, Hunter Biden, on the board of this, the director of the board of Burisma, and getting $50,000 a month. He got very annoyed and basically called this voter fat, called him basically sort of unintelligent, challenged him to do push-ups. I mean, have you ever seen that Seinfeld thing? I'm not a fan of Seinfeld. He's sort of pro-Israel and pro-IDF, but there's this Seinfeld episode where Lloyd Bridges is playing this older guy who's basically always challenging Seinfeld to pick things, you know, to weight lift and all of this.
That's it. It's go time. Let's see you lift that.
Mr. Mandelbaum,
Come on.
It's really funny, and it reminds me of that. You know, this guy in Lloyd Bridges would be saying, "Okay, it's go time," and he'd basically challenge Seinfeld. You know, Lloyd Bridges in this was quite old, and Seinfeld wasn't challenging him to anything, and basically, so, you know, it was just basically, it reminds me of Joe Biden, you know, challenging this old guy, sort of a portly guy, and basically, I think at one point he even called him, he said, "Look fat," F-A-T. If you listen closely, I think he was going to say, "Look fat," something or other. I don't know. I don't think it was "Look Jack." It sounded like fat to me.
I got a question I want you to answer. We all know Trump has been messing around in Ukraine over there, holding their foreign aid for them to come up, saying they're going to investigate you. We don't know that. He's no backbone for that. But you, on the other hand, sent your son over there to get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with gas or nothing, in order to get access to the public, for the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he is. So
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one has ever said that? No one has proved that?
I see it on the TV.
You see it on the TV. No, I know you do. And by the way, that's why I'm not sedentary. I get up and no, let him go. Let him go. Look, the reason I'm running is because I've been around a long time and I know more than most people know. And I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape line, let's do push-ups together here, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take the Number two. No one has said my son has done anything wrong, and I did not on any occasion. And no one has ever said it. Not
I
one.
didn't say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That's what I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that on MSNBC. You did not hear that at all. What you heard, look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man.
Well, I don't want to.
Well, yeah, you do, but look, fat, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal.
It looks like you don't have any more backbone than Trump does.
Let him talk.
Any other questions?
This is sort of something that this really, really gives an indication, amongst so many other things now, that he's not, well, nobody's fit to be president really, because they're all corporate-owned warmongers, but as far as just his mental ability. His mental ability to do that job is about as bad, or in some cases worse, than Donald Trump, who's impulsive, and Donald Trump's advisors often, I think, their jaws drop when Donald Trump sort of gets off the script.
We have a situation where we're looking very strongly at sinks and showers and other elements of bathrooms where you turn the faucet on in areas where there's tremendous amounts of water, where the water rushes out to sea because you could never handle it, and you don't get any water. You turn on the faucet, you don't get any water. They take a shower and water comes dripping out, just dripping out, very quietly dripping out. People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15.
Anyway, so if you've seen any the whole clip of Joe Biden talking, he has some black people behind him, some black children, and he's talking about this weird story about corn pops or something, and then he goes on to say he had long hair on his legs that were blonde, and it was so weird. And then he said, and the children, would jump in my lap. It was all disjointed and sort of completely, I don't know, it was a rambling story. I'll see if I can find that for you, and I'll just play some of it because it's very odd.
And by the way, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what, the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time, they're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender.
I think that cognitively he's sort of losing it before our eyes, and the fact that he jumped down the throat of this 83-year-old farm worker, ex-farm worker, and called him a liar for actually saying something that was probably true. That's why Joe Biden got so reactive. He sort of, it was almost like, how dare you bring this up? You're not supposed to bring it. You're supposed to give me softball questions and be glad that I'm here. Be glad that I've graced your my presence at your town hall meeting. Instead, he's mentioning what the mainstream media doesn't do, and that is bring up the difficult questions that need to be asked. So if you want to find out what happened with Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden in relation to Ukraine and Burisma, the corrupt oil and gas company, I point you towards The Grey Zone, Max Blumenthal did a long essay about this, and it explains a lot. He does amazing reporting, and there's truth in that accusation, of course, that elderly voter said to Joe Biden, in which he reacted so strongly against, because there was truth in what he was saying. So I invite you to check out that article. I could read some of it, but it's very, very long, so I'll leave that to you. But suffice to say, guilt made him react badly to that suggestion that he gained access for his son to make lots and lots of money on Burisma, and that there's money being passed back and forth between Burisma and the Atlantic Council, this corrupt oil and gas corporation. And the Atlantic Council, of course, is involved in is part of NATO and a think tank for NATO, and is always looking for a country to overthrow that isn't playing ball with the US empire, and that happened to be Ukraine. So straight after Joe Biden helped overthrow Ukraine, all that went down. So anyway, that's I'll play this excerpt of him attacking this elderly voter, and then I'll play some of that odd speech that he gave to a crowd of black people when he's talking about corn puffs and children jumping on his lap and cockroaches and all sorts of things. It was so strange. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think that Joe Biden is going to end up being the nominee. I think he has too much baggage, and there's too many things that Trump, if this is how he reacts to an elderly voter, Trump could run circles around him. So, you know, Trump's a liar too. And the both of them, I think Trump will just run circles around him, and that's the problem. It's almost like the U.S. Democratic Party wants Trump to win, because this is the kind of person they're favoring as the nominee. Instead of favoring Bernie Sanders, and I've told you my problems with Bernie Sanders being an imperialist and that kind of thing, but even though he has turned a corner in some ways in that regard, but he has a long history of supporting regime change and imperialist adventures. But Bernie Sanders, his domestic economic policy is superior. His economic advisor, Stephanie Kelton, is a proponent of MMT, which is simply a description of the operational reality of a sovereign economy, and that's why he really knows how to use the economy to the benefit of the people, and I believe that he would, if he was allowed to, of course. And they will not, the US Democratic Party does not want anybody remotely progressive as a nominee. That's the bottom line. They'd rather Trump win than have that happen. They're not working for the people, so why should they care if Trump's in again? This is all just theatre, you know, all this impeachment stuff. Yes, he's done lots of things that are bad, and they could impeach him on Yemen, and a genocide in Yemen. They could impeach him on a whole bunch of things. Look at Ralph Nader, the Ralph Nader Hour, and look at this. He's done recently a series of videos on how Trump could be impeached, and this is sort of like probably the weakest thing they could get him on. And they all do it. They all get like even Joe Biden actually was bragging about threatening the Ukrainian president if you don't sack this Ukrainian prosecutor who was looking into the corruption at Burisma. He said, you don't get the $1 billion. You have 6 hours to think about it. You don't get the $1 billion that our government was going to give you. You know, he's actually sort of manipulating presidents too.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
He's not a president, but he was a vice president at the time. I mean, these people are constantly sort of manipulating governments and overthrowing governments. The U.S. empire has overthrown 50-plus countries, elected governments since the end of the Second World War. This is what they do, and they're constantly kind of manipulating governments with money. And, sort of basically the CIA, that's what the CIA does. It's worse than the mafia. So anyway, it's all just a joke, because, I mean, this is what Donald Trump has done is just the same as what every other. It's just that he was stupid and got, he got through the whole Russiagate thing, which was just a joke. It was a nonsense. It was a nothing burger. He got through all of that, and then he goes and shoots himself in the face by with this, sort of. I mean, these people. I don't know. They're just blithering, incompetent, but they're dangerous at the same time. They're dangerous people. They're psychopaths. And if you've had a look recently on how often Hillary Clinton now is being seen on the mainstream media, I even saw her on the Graham Norton show in the UK, talking about how people are encouraging her to run. And how she's going to be behind the scenes anyway, even if she doesn't run. I mean, she keeps cropping up everywhere. She's on Howard Stern and red baiting Bernie Sanders on Howard Stern.
Bernie Sanders, and this was a perception I had. You would say a policy when you were running against him for the nomination.
Right.
And the next day you go, yeah, well, free college for everyone.
Yeah.
It's almost like when you run for a fifth grade class.
Yeah, right.
I'll give you free everything.
Chocolate milk for
everyone and more recess.
More
pizza.
And then it makes it look like you're a stick in the mud.
I know. And then when you say, well, wait a minute, where's the money going to come from? Then what about, are you against free college? I know.
And Howard Stern has got $600 million, but Hillary Clinton has $200 million, and here they are mocking Bernie Sanders, saying how is he going to pay for it, when they know damn well how he's going to pay for it, because that's how they pay, this for the same way you pay for the wars. And it's not, it's a sovereign economy, and this is why Stephanie Kelton, who was a proponent of MMT, who was Bernie Sanders' economic advisor in 2016 and 2020, talks about MMT, talks about the sovereign economy and how you can pay for things. The only constraints are resources in a sovereign economy, which is a currency issuer. This whole thing that government debt is like a household debt is a big economic illiterate lie. So, of course, the same way you pay for the wars, Congress, gives the permission, and that's how the sovereign economy, you get that money and that's how you pay for it. It's not through federal taxes. That's why we need to understand MMT. Federal taxes do not fund spending. They don't fund the wars. It's not your federal taxes that fund the wars or fund any of the social programs or fund Medicare, even if Bernie Sanders says it does, because he's trying to keep the narrative like it used to be, so he's not confusing voters. But when you understand how Stephanie Kelton talks about the sovereign economy, you think, why on earth is he talking like that when he knows better? But that's how it is. But anyway, please look at Stephanie Kelton's YouTube videos and find out what I mean by MMT and why federal taxes don't fund spending and why Medicare for all can easily be paid for, just like all these expensive wars with $800 billion there and $1 trillion there, and it's insane. So let's get ourselves educated on what a sovereign economy can do, and then we can point out the economically illiterate nonsense that a lot of politicians put out. Anyway, I'm getting off the track, but so Joe Biden, please check out that Gray Zone project, The Gray Zone by Max Blumenthal. I'll post a link in the information section of this video on Faint Signals from Vega. Please look at it because it explains how in the weeds Joe Biden is with his son Hunter Biden with Ukraine and the overthrowing of Ukraine, plus Burisma and the Atlantic Council, and that's a right-wing warmongering think tank, which by the way is also involved with Facebook and helping them sort out who's okay on Facebook and who isn't. This is the Atlantic Council, right? So they're all tied up. It's as corrupt can be. The whole thing is corrupt to the hilt, and it's all in plain sight now. They don't even care what the public think anymore about this. They don't give a toss about what the public think about their corruption. So anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if they just ditched Joe Biden. Kamala Harris dropped out of the race because obviously the billionaires didn't favor her as much as they do Buttigieg, who's just a neoconservative warmongering. I mean, he's going to be horrific. He's going to be sort of worse than Obama. He probably, they could pick him. They could pick Elizabeth Warren, who's similar. She's not going to do Medicare for all. She's a warmonger too. She thinks these economic sanctions on Venezuela are just fine. They've killed 40,000 Venezuelans since they were brought in by the Trump administration, since 2017. She's okay with all of that. Or they could go for a billionaire. I mean, there's billionaires backing Buttigieg. There's about 20. He's got more billionaires backing him than anybody. But they could pick Bloomberg. I think it's Bloomberg. I mean, they could just bypass them all. They could bypass them all and pick somebody who's a billionaire who may not have as much baggage as Joe Biden. Who knows? Anyway, it's all just big theater. The whole impeachment thing is big theater. If ever they should have impeached somebody, it should have been George W. Bush. They could have. These people, they're all war criminals. Obama's a war criminal. George W. Bush is a war criminal. Bill Clinton is a war criminal. Hillary Clinton is a war criminal. Donald Trump is a war criminal. I mean, they should all be at The Hague. Anyway, thanks for watching. My name is Trish Roberts. Stay tuned. If you're watching Facebookers from Vega, please subscribe if you haven't already to my channel. Please hit the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive notifications when I drop a video. Sorry about the wind. I was trying to do this outside because I thought it'd be a nice idea, but I forget how bad the wind can be here. I love Tasmania, and it's an island, so the wind gets pretty crazy sometimes in spring. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. Till next time. Bye for now.